Now, there lived on the banks of the big Wagai River the Neolithic man, whose name was Tegumai Bobsulai, and the Neolithic woman called Teshumai Tewindro, and their little Neolithic daughter called Tafimai Metalumai, but whom we know as Taffy. And they lived happily together in their Neolithic cave. As usual, Taffy went carp fishing with her father, Tegumai. Her mother, Teshumai, wanted her to stay at home and help hang up hides to dry on the big drying poles. But Taffy slipped away quite early to where Tegumai was fishing, and she took out a marrowbone and sat very quiet while Tegumai fished. Then she said, "Dad, I've thought of a secret surprise. You make a noise, any sort of noise."
"Ah," said Tegumai. "Will that do to begin with?"
"Yes," said Taffy. "You look just like a carpfish with its mouth open. Say it again, please."
"What for?" said Tegumai.
"It's part of my secret surprise." "Oh, do say ah again, Dad. And keep your mouth open at the end. I'm going to draw a carpfish's mouth wide open." And she took a shark's tooth and scratched away on a piece of bark.
"Why?" said Tegumai.
"Don't you see?" said Taffy. "When I draw a carpfish with its mouth open, it will remind you of that ah noise."
"Really?" said Tegumai.
And he went on with his fishing. "Oh, bother," said Taffy. "I can't draw all of a carpfish, just its mouth."
"That's not bad," said Tegumai. "But you've forgotten the feeler that hangs across its mouth."
So Taffy drew in a carp's feeler. "Now make another noise," said Taffy, very proud.
"Yeah," said Tegumai.
Said Taffy. "That's a mixture of noises."
"Why don't you draw another bit of the carpfish?"
said Tegumai, becoming quite excited himself. "I'll draw his tail," said Taffy.
"A good notion," said Tegumai.
"Remember, I can't draw. Will it do if I just draw the split part of the tail?"
Tegumai nodded.
"Now make another noise," said Taffy.
"Oh," said Tegumai.
"That's quite easy," said Taffy. "You made your mouth all round like an egg, so an egg will do for that." And she drew an egg. "My gracious," said Taffy. "What a lot of noise pictures we've made. Carp mouth, carp tail, and egg. Now make another noise, Dad."
"Shh," said Tegumai, who was trying to fish.
"That's quite easy too," said Taffy.
"Eh? What? No. I meant I was fishing and didn't want to be disturbed."
"It's a noise just the same. It's the noise a snake makes when it doesn't want to be disturbed. Let's make the noise a snake. And if you draw it on a tree by the river when you're fishing, I'll know you want me to walk quietly so as not to shake the banks."
"Perfectly true," said Tegumai. "There's more in this game than you think. I've a notion that Tegumai's daughter has hit upon the finest thing that ever was. We've found out the big secret of the world."
"Why?"
said Taffy.
"I'll show you."
"What is the word for swamp water in our language? Water you mustn't drink."
Yo, of course."
"Suppose you saw this scratched by the side of a pool," cried Tegumai.
"Carp tail and round egg, yo, bad water. Of course, I wouldn't drink it. And still it would be just the same as if you stood there and said, 'Go away, Taffy, or you'll get fever.'" And she danced all round him. Then they heard Teshumai calling them. They were late for their supper. So they went home. That evening, Tegumai watched Taffy lying on the floor of the cave drawing R's and O's. And they giggled together till Teshumai said, "Really, Tegumai, you're worse than my Taffy." "Please don't mind," said Taffy. "It's only our secret surprise. We'll tell you all about it the very minute it's done." Bright and early next morning, Tegumai and Taffy went up onto the cliff above the river so that they could think about their new sound pictures in secret. So means food. Yes, snake and egg. That means dinner's ready. My Winky, said Tegumai. So means come and have dinner, but show means drying poles where we hang our hides. Horrid old drying poles, said Taffy. We must make a new picture for show. I think I'd better draw a picture of the horrid drying poles after the snake and make quite sure there's no mistake, said Taffy. Do some more noises. Shoo, said Tegumai, looking up. That means sky. Taffy drew the snake and the drying poles and a round egg without a top to make ooh. Then Tegumai took a shark's tooth and scratched on a tree, shoo-yo. Sky, water, said Taffy. That's rain. Why, it's raining. Of course, said Tegumai. And I told you without saying a word. Soon they'd drawn all the picture sounds that they wanted. And there was the alphabet all complete. And they went home to tell Teshumai their secret. And that was the way it was. Just so. A long time ago, on the banks of the Wagai River. Once upon a most early time, there was a Neolithic man. He was not a Jute, or an Angle, or even a Dravidian, which he might well have been. He lived in a cave, and he wore very few clothes, and he couldn't read, and he couldn't write, and he didn't want to. And except when he was hungry, he was quite happy. His name was Tegumai Bopsulai, but we will call him Tegumai for short. He lived with a woman whose name was Teshumai Tewindro, but we will call her Teshumai for short. And her little girl daughter's name was Tafimai Metalumai, but we'll call her Taffy. And they were all three very happy. As soon as Taffy could run about, she went everywhere with Tegumai. Sometimes they wouldn't come home to the cave till they were hungry. Then Teshumai would say, "Where in the world have you two been to get so shocking dirty?" One day, Tegumai Bopsulai went down through the beaver swamp to the Wagai River to spear carpfish for dinner. Taffy went too. Tegumai's spear was made of wood with shark's teeth at the end. But before it caught any fish at all, he accidentally broke it clean across by jabbing it down too hard on the bottom of the river. They were miles and miles from home, and Tegumai had forgotten to bring any extra spears.
Here's a pretty kettle of fish,
Said Tegumai.
It will take me half the day to mend this.
There's your big black spear at home, said Taffy. Let me run back to the cave and ask Mummy to give it to me.
It's too far for your little fat legs, said Tegumai. Besides, you might fall into the beaver swamp and be drowned. We must make the best of a bad job.
So he sat down and took out a little leather mending bag full of reindeer sinews, strips of leather and lumps of beeswax, and he began to mend the spear. Taffy sat down too, with her toes in the water and her chin in her hands, and thought very hard. Then she said,
I say, Dad, it's an awful nuisance that you and I don't know how to write, isn't it? If we did, we could send a message for the new spear.
Now you mention it, said Tegumai. That would be a convenience.
Just then, a stranger came along the river. He belonged to a far-off tribe called the Tewaras, and he didn't understand a word of Tegumai's language. So he stood on the bank and smiled at Taffy.
Come here, said Taffy. Do you know where my mother lives?
But being a Tewaran, the stranger just said,
Silly,
said Taffy, and she stamped her foot.
Don't bother him,
said Tegumai.
I'm not, said Taffy. I only want him to do what I want him to do, but he doesn't understand.
Then don't bother me, said Tegumai, and he went on mending his spear.
This is a wonderful child, thought the Tewaran. She stamps her foot and makes faces at me. She must be the daughter of the noble chief, who is so great he doesn't take any notice of me.
So he smiled more politely than ever.
Now, said Taffy, I want you to go to my mother, because your legs are longer than mine, and you won't fall into the beaver swamp, and ask for Dad's other spear, the one with the black hand.
I don't understand a word this very wonderful child says.
So he twisted a piece of bark from a birch tree and gave it to Taffy. He did this to show that his heart was as white as the bark, and he meant no harm. But Taffy didn't understand.
Oh, I see, she said. You want my mother's living address. Of course, I can't write, but I can draw pictures if I've anything sharp to scratch with.
And she pulled at the shark's tooth hanging round the Tewaran's neck.
I was always told, thought the Tewaran, that my shark's tooth was magic, and that if anybody touched it without my permission, they would immediately swell up or burst.
But as Taffy didn't swell up or burst, and Tegumai didn't seem to be afraid that she would swell up or burst, the Tewaran thought he had better give her the shark's tooth. And Taffy used it to draw her picture.
First, I'll draw Dad fishing with his spear all broken. Now, I'll draw the black-handled spear. It looks as if it's sticking in Dad's back, and that's because the shark's tooth slipped. And this is me explaining to you. My hair doesn't really stand up like that, but it's easier to draw that way. And this is you. I put the spear Dad wants in your hand.
The Tewaran hurried away with the picture and ran for miles till, quite by accident, he found Teshumai Tewindro at the door of the cave. She was talking to some other Neolithic ladies. The Tewaran recognized Teshumai because she looked very much like Taffy. He smiled politely and handed Teshumai the birch bark. As soon as she saw the picture, she screamed. The other Neolithic ladies at once knocked him down and sat on him.
He has stuck my Tegumai all full of spears and frightened poor Taffy so that her hair stands on end,
cried Teshumai.
Then he brings me a horrid picture of how it was done. Look.
She showed the picture to the Neolithic ladies sitting patiently on the Tewaran.
Most shocking,
they said, and they filled the Tiwaran's hair with mud. Then they led him down to the Wagai River so that he might show them where he had hidden poor Taffy. They found Taffy making daisy chains.
What are you doing to my nice stranger man? He came with a horrible picture showing my Tegumai full of spears and you with your hair standing up with fright,
said Teshumai.
I wanted the stranger man to fetch Dad's spears, so I drawed it,
said Taffy. You've hit upon a great invention.
I didn't intend to.
Never mind. Someday people will call it writing. Then he asked the Tiwaran if he would like to join their tribe, because he was a gentleman, and didn't make a fuss about the mud the Neolithic ladies had put into his hair. In the far-off times, there was a stickly, prickly hedgehog. He lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon, eating shelly snails and things. He had a friend, a slow, solid tortoise, who also lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon, eating green lettuces and things. So that was all right. There was a painted jaguar who lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon too. And he ate everything that he could catch. When he couldn't catch deer or monkeys, he ate frogs and beetles. And when he couldn't catch frogs and beetles, he went to his mother, and she told him how to eat hedgehogs and tortoises. "My son," she said to him, "when you find a hedgehog, you must drop him into the water, and then he will uncoil. And when you catch a tortoise, you must scoop him out of his shell with your paw." And so that was all right. One beautiful night, the painted jaguar found Stickly Prickly Hedgehog and Slow and Solid Tortoise sitting under the trunk of a fallen tree. Stickly Prickly curled himself up into a ball because he was a hedgehog. And Slow and Solid drew his head and feet into his shell as far as they would go, because he was a tortoise. So that was all right.
"Now, attend to me,"
said Painted Jaguar.
"because this is very important. My mother said that when I meet a hedgehog, I am to drop him into the water, and then he will uncoil. And when I meet a tortoise, I'm to scoop him out of his shell with my paw. Now, which of you is tortoise? Because I can't tell.
Are you sure of what your mother told you? Said Stickly Prickly Hedgehog. Are you quite sure? Perhaps she said that when you uncoil a tortoise, you must shell him out of the water with a scoop. And when you paw a hedgehog, you must drop him on the shell.
Are you sure of what your mother told you? Said Slow and Solid Tortoise. Are you quite sure? Perhaps she said that when you water a hedgehog, you must drop him into your paw. And when you meet a tortoise, you must shell him till he uncoils.
I didn't want your advice at all. I only wanted to know which of you is hedgehog and which is tortoise.
I shan't tell you, said Stickly Prickly. But you can scoop me out of my shell if you like.
Aha, said the Painted Jaguar. Now I know you're the tortoise, and I'm going to scoop you out of your shell.
Yeah!
Screams Jaguar. And Stickly Prickly went and hid in the bushes. Painted Jaguar's paw was filled with prickles. He put it into his mouth, but the prickles hurt him worse than ever. Now I know he isn't tortoise. But how do I know that this other is?
But I am tortoise, said Slow and Solid. Your mother was quite right. She said that you were to scoop me out of my shell with your paw. Begin.
What will happen if I do?
I don't know, because I've never been scooped before. But I tell you truly, if you want to see me swim away, you've only to drop me into the water.
Ah, my mother told me that I was to drop one of you two into the water, and as you seem so anxious to be dropped, I think you don't want to be dropped. So I'm going to drop you into the turbid Amazon.
I warn you that your mother won't be pleased.
That was a narrow escape, said Stickly Prickly. I don't like Painted Jaguar.
I told him truthfully that I was a truthful tortoise, but he didn't believe me. Now he's gone to tell his mother. Listen.
Son,
said Jaguar's mother.
what have you been doing? I tried to scoop something that said it wanted to be scooped, and my paw is full of prickles,
said Painted Jaguar.
That must have been a hedgehog,
said his mother.
You should have dropped him into the water. I did that to the other thing, and he swam away. And I haven't anything at all to eat. And I think we'd better find new lodging somewhere else. They're too clever on the turbid Amazon for me.
A hedgehog curls himself up into a ball, and his prickles stick out.
And by this, you may know the hedgehog.
I don't like this old lady one little bit, said Stickly Prickly.
A tortoise, Mother Jaguar went on, can't curl himself up. He only draws his head into his shell. By this you may know the tortoise.
I don't like this lady at all,
said Slow and Solid. Can't curl, but can swim. Slow, Solid, that's him. Curls up, but can't swim. Stickly Prickly, that's him. It's a great pity I can't swim, said Stickly Prickly.
I'll teach you, and you can teach me to curl up.
So Stickly Prickly learned how to swim, and Slow and Solid learned how to curl up by exercising his back plates. By and by, Painted Jaguar found them. Now attend to me, he said, because this is very important. Which of you can't curl, but can swim? We both can curl and swim, said Stickly Prickly and Slow and Solid. And Painted Jaguar went to fetch his mother. Mother, he said, there are 2 new animals in the woods today, and the one that you said couldn't swim, swims, and the one that you said couldn't curl, curls. And both are scaly all over, instead of one being smooth and the other being prickly.
Son, said Mother Jaguar, the hedgehog is a hedgehog, and a tortoise is a tortoise.
But this is a little bit of both, and I don't know its proper name.
Then I should call it armadillo for the moment, and I should leave it alone.
The curious thing is that from that day to this, no one on the banks of the turbid Amazon has ever called Stickly Prickly and Slow and Solid anything except armadillo. So that's all right.